Hey guys, welcome back. If you're here, that means that you just finished watching some clips about Hercules and Winnie the Pooh, and we talked a little bit more about third person. Now that you're here, we're going to talk a little bit more about the text that we read yesterday. And we're going to talk a little bit about character traits and finding evidence. The reason we're doing this is because we know that when we look in our story organizer, we're going to always include the point of view in the T box, in the talking characters box. But I wanted to actually take some time and practice a skill that we haven't had the opportunity to practice in a while. And this is the skill of finding evidence to support our answers, which you guys are like rock stars at. So I know this is going to be super simple for you. So like I said, we're going to do a quick review and we're going to dive back into the giant lumberjack. This is a GIF of Paul Bunyan as portrayed by Homer Simpson riding Babe the Big Blue Ox. I really liked this image because it shows you how big Paul Bunyan was. Like, look at Babe the Blue Ox is like as tall as the tree. So he was ginormous, humongous. Let's keep going. So this is what we're going to talk a little bit more today. We're going to talk about how we cite evidence. Yesterday, when we were filling out our forms and after we had read through the text, we said that Paul Bunyan was humongous, caring, helpful, and clumsy. Today, we're going to talk about how we find pieces of evidence that show two of the character traits. Remember back in guided reading class when you were asked to give a character trait, we always asked that you gave two. And when we give two answers, it's really important that we have how many pieces of evidence? One or two? You got it. We need two pieces of evidence for two answers. We had one answer, one piece of evidence. Three answers, three pieces of evidence. You got it. So we're actually going to do an example together. Let's take a look at this question. Yesterday, we said that Paul Bunyan was humongous, caring, helpful, and clumsy. Find two pieces of evidence that show how Paul was humongous and caring. Oh, well, I need to take a second and I need to go back to what we have already learned. I know that whenever I have a question, I need to ask myself, is this a big idea question or a supporting detail question? Well, this question is asking me to find pieces of evidence from the text that I just read. And I know that big idea questions are questions we can ask about any text, but supporting detail questions are going to be questions where I have to look back into the specific text that I just read. This is a supporting detail question. I know to answer supporting detail questions, I need to highlight the inference that I'm trying to prove. So here, this question is asking me to find two pieces of evidence to support the fact that Paul was one, humongous, and two, caring. So I need to find pieces of evidence that match either him being humongous or pieces of evidence that match him being caring. So let's now go through and let's use process of elimination, POE codes, to determine which answers are correct and which ones are incorrect. Let's do this. Ooh, I gave it away too quick. That's okay. I knew you guys were going to get it with me anyway. Let's read answer choice A. As one story goes, Paul Bunyan was born years ago in Bangor, Maine. You already saw that this was not relevant. So take a moment to think, why is this not relevant to answer this question? You're right. This is just a piece of evidence that shows us Paul Bunyan was born. We know he was born. We're looking for evidence to show he was either humongous or caring. So you're right, not relevant. B, during a nap one day, he flattened 4 miles of forest. What do you think? Does this show that Paul was humongous? Yeah, it does kind of show us that he was humongous. I put an H here to help us kind of remember what the piece of evidence, what trait the evidence was supporting. The fact that he flattened 4 miles of forest because he laid down to take a nap, like he has to be pretty big to flatten out that whole area. So I agree, that does show that he was humongous. Let's look at C. One day, Paul dug Lake Michigan so his new friend, Babe the Blue Ox, could have a drink of water. Does that show that he was humongous? Kind of. He dug a huge lake. I know that it would be easier if he was bigger to do this quickly, but if I were my size and I worked every day maybe for 20 years, I could also build a lake. So that doesn't really show me that he was humongous. What about caring? Does this show that he was caring? I agree. I think that this does show that he was caring. His friend, Babe the Blue Ox, needed a drink of water. So Paul dug a huge lake. Do you hear my son? He's singing something, I think. I think it was Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. But back to this. He dug a lake so that his ox could drink water. That seems really caring to me. D. Paul was so famous that to this day, many of these states claim to be Paul Bunyan's birthplace and have built statues to remember his help in building America. I'm going to say that this is not relevant. It doesn't really show me that he was humongous or show me that he was caring. So I remember that the question is asking me to find two pieces of evidence. That here tells me that B and C are going to be correct. So when I go into my answer form, I need to select two answers, B and C. How does the evidence during a nap one day he flattened 4 miles of forest show that Paul Bunyan was humongous? RA plus E. This is going to be an answer where you're going to need to type out your response. So normally when we would have a question like this, we would write it out. Today, you're just going to type it. And we're going to work through this one together because you're going to answer a really similar one on your own for the guided practice. But I'm really asking myself, how does this evidence, the quote that they gave me, show that he was humongous? The first thing I need to do is restate my question. So I wrote, the evidence during a nap one day, he flattened 4 miles of forest shows that Paul Bunyan was humongous. That's me restating my question. Now I need to add my answer. Why does this show that because he flattened the forest, he was humongous? Well, remember earlier when we were talking about this, if he's laying down to take a nap, when we lay down, do we cover 4 miles? No, 4 miles is a huge distance. So that tells me that he was pretty big. So my answer here is this shows me that Paul Bunyan was humongous because, look at the yellow, in the story, he flattened 4 miles of forest. It's not enough to just restate the question and answer the question. I need to explain why my answer is correct. This tells me that he was humongous because you would have to be extremely large to lay down and cover 4 miles. Whew, an RA plus an explanation. You guys can do that. You guys are so used to doing RACCE responses. So I know that a restate, an answer, and an explanation are going to be a breeze for you. Say, we got this. Good work. You totally do. So now what you're going to go ahead and do is you're going to go scroll down in the Google form and you're going to answer these questions on your own. Again, I'm going to show you what this looks like. In this section, you'll see that it's called the Giant Lumberjack. I put a copy of the text in for you if you'd like to reread it, and I also put in a copy of my story organizer. This is the question that we answered together. 2 pieces of evidence for humongous and caring, and then our response. So you can look back at this video to figure out what my answers to these questions were. Guys, real talk for just a minute. A lot of you are getting the questions wrong that I'm giving you the answer to in the video. Silly, silly goose. Make sure you're watching these fun videos because Mrs. Lardner is super entertaining. Make sure you're watching these videos because I'm giving you a lot of the answers. Those are easy points that you can get just by watching and paying attention. The next 2 questions are going to be questions that you're going to answer on your own. You're going to find 2 more pieces of evidence to show how he was helpful and how he was clumsy. And then you're going to answer this question, why this piece of evidence shows that he was clumsy. I know you guys are going to do a fantastic job. Go ahead and scroll down, answer those questions, press next, and I'll see you on the next form. Bye, guys.